Hey there, advanced procrastinators. Welcome back to another edition of Study Guide Review from Fast Track to 5. We will be going over Chapter 6 today. Now, make sure you've already answered these questions for Study Guide number 6, and these are these 10 questions we will be going over, as well as the fact that these are the checking for understanding questions to be answered as we go through the lecture. So for my students, make sure that Google Doc is open and turn it in after the video. So let's talk about study guide number 6, Manifest Destiny. Now we are looking at the nation's expansion west. And given that the United States was constantly expanding west in its infancy as a nation, we're going to understand how Manifest Destiny propelled and justified American expansion. We will identify the land annexed and explain how the U.S. acquired additional land outside the original borders set in 1783. So, define Manifest Destiny and the person who coined the phrase. Well, Manifest destiny is the idea as America expands that we have a God given right to expand across the continent. We are going from sea to sea. It was coined by John O. Sullivan. Now, what's the reason why we had to come up with an excuse as to why it's okay for the United States to expand and two segments of society that thought it was useful? Well, the first reason, rationalization of U.S. expansion, is that it's okay to take other people's lands, right? We're not stealing it from you because God's on our side. God is gifting it to us. The other reason, though, people usually don't think about Manifest Destiny is it creates national unity. Remember, the colonies started out as 13 independent sovereign nations. Manifest Destiny is helping America transition from being these small sovereign states into one national nation. And the idea of Manifest Destiny is, do you want to stay as part of your small little state, or do you want to be part of a greater empire that's expanding around the continent? Now, who is going to be in support of Manifest Destiny? Well, obviously, farmers. They get more land out of this. As we expand westward, there's more land for future generations. So if my grandfather got land in Virginia, I got land in Ohio, my son might get land in Nebraska. Also, manufacturers. So it's not just Jeffersonians and farmers, it's manufacturers looking west thinking, hey, there's lots of natural resources out there. And these natural resources can be used in manufacturing, and which it does. America has loads of natural resources out there: oil, timber, gold, silver. All those things are going to help fuel the Industrial Revolution. Now, analyze the two images on the right and explain how the one at the top emotes a connection to God, but identify the instrument used to help America expand west. So answer that question. And the answer to this is obviously in the upper right hand corner. The connotation to God is the angel walking across the middle. That's quite obvious. But look for more details in images, guys. Look at the right side of the image. It's in the light. The area that the angel's already been is lit. It's civilized. And as she's moving west, the west is dark. There are clouds. And the idea is we are going to help fix and civilize and bring the light to that area. Now, the instrument of Manifest Destiny, as you see on the right, is going to be the gun. Yes, as American settlers move west, they are going to use force in order to settle many of these areas in the West. Now, when and how did we acquire many of the areas in the United States in order to expand from continent to continent? Obviously, the Louisiana Purchase, the large red bit in the middle, that was bought from France for $15 million. Florida, we purchased this in 1819 from Spain in the Adams-Onis Treaty. And in green on the far left side of the map is the Mexican cession, which is from the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. That is acquired through war in which the U.S. paid a defeated Mexico $15 million. Now, keep this in mind. There's the answer to my question. Besides war, identify a way that the U.S. annexed a majority of its square footage. And in actuality, guys, America did not steal most of the land as far as territorial acquisition. It was purchased, or it was a treaty. The Louisiana Purchase and Florida were both purchased through peaceful methods, just signing a check. Same with the Gadsden Purchase, which is in the lower southwest corner of where Arizona is today, from Mexico for $10 million. Alaska is purchased from Russia for $7.2 million in 1867, and Oregon was negotiated by a treaty. So in reality, you can make an argument that the way the United States acquired its land was not through conquest. Mexican cession, yes, that was through conquest, and the Texas annexation was through conquest as well too. But in actuality, the way we acquired the land was not through that. But the settlement of Americans in the West, that was acquired through violence. Americans moving into the actual area and having to displace the Mexicans or the Native Americans that were already living there. Now, let's talk about the War of 1812 and how America goes into a second war against England. Now, the War Hawks are a group of politicians from Western states that wanted to go to war with England out of a desire for respect. Now, what do these War Hawks want? What's being disrespected here? Well, what's happening to American soldiers are impressments. England is at war with France in the Napoleonic Wars. And in their naval wars, a navy has a right to grab any sailor at sea of their country and draft them into the Navy. Now, England still does not really recognize American independence. So, American sailors at sea are being kidnapped by the English Navy and forced to fight in the British Navy against France, which is, and a lot of times, that's a death sentence of what it is. Now, this is technically the cause of the War of 1812. And the War Hawks are thinking, hey, as America, we have to earn enough respect so England doesn't do this to us. But another reason why these Western states and the Warhawks want more land is to, one, have a war and fight against Indians to take the land from the Indians, but also to get Canada. England controls Canada. If you can go to war against England and control Canada and a nation of small farmers, in the upper left hand corner, look at that map, guys. And that gold colored Canada, imagine if all that turned into the United States. The United States would be the second largest country in the world by size after Russia. Now, why would it be Western states that would be more America, more nationalistic than politicians from the original 13 colonies? Why isn't it Virginia clamoring, hey, let's go take Canada. Let's go get more land for Indians, right? So why is it states like in the West, Kentucky or Tennessee, demanding these? And the answer to it is because the original 13 colonies, um, write this down, were sovereign countries, right? They saw themselves as being independent. So they're getting used to the idea of being part of a larger United States. Whereas states like Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee only know being part of the United States. So as members of the United States, they would like to see the United States to grow. Virginia, South Carolina, Massachusetts, they're still like, well, we're part of this larger country, which is fine, but we don't need to really do that yet. Now, in the War of 1812, it is not the most successful war in American history, but spoiler alert, America does win the war. A positive of it is it does create American nationalism, right? Remember, we have to make this transition from being 13 independent nations to one nation. And by defeating England again twice, it makes Americans feel proud. We've beaten the strongest country in the world 2 times. Also, it earns respect. England finally truly recognizes American independence. England knows America's never going to go back into its empire. So England basically says, America, can we be best friends forever? Can we be BFFs? We have the same language, we have same ideas. And by the way, if we get along with each other, then we don't have to watch each other's back in regards to each other. So Europe and England both recognize America. Now, the negative is England invaded America and captured Washington, D.C. In the upper right hand corner, you can see that is Washington, that is the White House being burned to the ground. Okay. And Canada was never captured. Now, the Monroe Doctrine. Now, what's happening also at this time, and a reason why England wanted to agree and be BFFs with America is because in Latin America, Spanish colonies, the people of those colonies are rebelling and gaining independence. Mexico becomes an independent nation in 1821. And the fear here is Mexico's independent. Yay, go Mexico. But can Mexico protect itself from being invaded by a foreign power like, say, France? They defeated Spain. Spain's weak. But what about France? So, what America proposes is to be the policeman of the Western Hemisphere where America says, look, there's going to be no new colonies in Latin America. That's the Monroe Doctrine. If you already have a colony in Western America, like Jamaica, you can keep it. But France is not allowed to come in and take over Mexico. Now, this was passed so America would become the dominant country in the Americas. Now, can America enforce this treaty, letter D? No. The U.S. needs England to help enforce this. We do not have the Navy, but England does. So the U.S. right can be the big boy over there, but for England, they don't have to worry about Latin America because their idea is already is to focus on Africa and other parts of the world, and that's a reason why England want to be best friends with America. Is it covers everything on this side of the continent, so England can focus on other areas of the world. Now, how will Latin America react to U.S. protection? Well, this is the beginning of a difficult relationship with Latin America. The United States is really not being the policeman and protecting our little brothers that rebelled for independence in the West. What America is really doing is we know we're going to take over half of Mexico one day. And when we go to war against Mexico, we want to make sure we go to war against a weak Mexico and not a strong Mexico controlled by France. Now, on the way to the Mexican American War, there is Texas. Now, Texas is not part of the Mexican American War. In fact, Texas and its revolution is a completely separate event that does not involve the United States, but it does involve Americans that moved into Texas. Okay, and these Americans that moved into Texas are called Texicans. Now, why did they want to rebel against Mexican rule? And what's the reason why a lot of Americans are moving into Mexican Texas? Well, Mexico, in the map on the upper left, you can see there, Texas was like an outpost of Mexico. And when Mexico gained independence, there's no one really living in Texas except for a lot of Apache Indians. So Mexico's thinking, what can we do to try to civilize Texas as well as earn money? Well, let's invite Americans into Texas to start growing cotton and make money for Mexico. So a lot of Americans, having already missed the land rush into Alabama and Mississippi to grow cotton, they move into Texas. Now, the thing to move to Texas, when these Americans move to Texas, there are a couple stipulations, right? Besides the fact there's cheap land, it's very fertile, there's access to rivers, and Texas is going to become the new cotton kingdom. There's going to be a cause of the revolution. Number one, if you're an American, you have to convert to Catholicism. So when you move to Mexico, there's no freedom of religion. So at first, a lot of Americans are like, well, okay, whatever. Can I make money? Yes. I don't care. I'm Catholic. But the other thing Mexico does, and a forward-thinking move, is Mexico banned slavery in 1829. And the problem is for these Americans that moved to Mexican Texas, is they want to grow cotton and they need slaves to grow cotton, and they brought their slaves with them. Now Mexico has basically told the Americans you can't grow cotton using slaves, and if you can't grow cotton using slaves, it's just not worth it. So how do these demands become the seeds of the Texas Revolution, where these Texicans are going to rise up and want to have Texas either join the United States or become an independent nation? Well, the answer is number one, these Americans want to restore slavery. As long as Texas is part of Mexico, there's no slavery. Another thing is these Texicans are Americans, and we believe in freedom of religion. And the idea of having everyone being forced to convert to religion, especially at this time, you're going to learn in the next unit with the Second Great Awakening, people are finding Jesus again, and they're taking Jesus really very, very seriously. Also, Mexico has lost democracy. It started out as a democracy. The leader of Mexico, Santa Anna, has made himself the dictator. And after the after the War of 1812, a lot of Americans, especially the ones in the West, are more nationalistic. They're more America. They would like to see Texas join the United States. Now, President Polk, he is the Manifest Destiny president, and he is the president you've never heard of who has had a greatest impact on America's expansion than any other. And what parts of the U.S. were acquired during Polk's presidency? Basically, it's going to be Oregon in the northwest corner of the map on the upper left, Texas in blue, and California Mexican cessions. So basically, half of what is the present day contiguous 48 states was acquired during President Polk's 4 years in office. Now, the Mexican American War. How does this war begin? Well, the reason why America goes to war against Mexico, honestly, is to take half of Mexico. But what America needed in order to take half of the land from Mexico was an excuse to go to war. And the excuse was American annexation of Texas. And when America annexes Texas, Mexico disagreed with that, obviously. Mexico's never really accepted Texas independence after the Mexican Revolution because Texans captured Santa Anna, put a gun to his head, and said, surrender or die. And Santa Anna surrendered Texas. So the Mexican people felt they never lost Texas. Santa Anna lost Texas. But when America annexed Texas, there are two different disputes of what Texas is. Now, in the map in the upper right, the United States is claiming the Rio Grande as the southern border of Texas. So that would include the striped area as a disputed area that America is claiming as theirs, whereas Mexico is saying, no, that's not Texas. That's actually part of New Mexico. America can have the Texas in the upper right, there, a smaller portion. What ends up happening here is American troops cross over in the disputed area. Mexican troops open fire on Americans. So Americans claim they were shot on American soil. Mexico claims they were invaded. Who's right? Doesn't matter. There's now a war. America basically captures all of Mexico. And at the end of the war, there's a treaty signed, and they're called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which gives America what? The Rio Grande border, the area that was in dispute between Texas and Mexico, and the Mexican cession. So Mexican cedes California to Mexico for $15 million. Now, when the war's over, though, in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, what do you do with Mexican citizens living in former areas of Mexico? There's not that many Mexicans living in these areas. I mean, there are, but it's not like hundreds of thousands or millions. We're talking like thousands. But what do you do with these Mexican citizens? Do you just kick them out? The answer is, remember, is that these Mexican citizens living in former areas of Mexico, now in the US, are made American citizens, which means they get full protection of their natural rights. So if they owned land before, if these Mexicans owned land in California, they still own the land. These Mexicans also get the right to vote and participate in politics too. So you can make an argument that Mexican Americans are the very first minority group that are given full citizenship rights in America, even before African Americans and even before women. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day.